Forum webcast. We aren't just in Boston anymore. I'm in New York City, and I'm interviewing Amanda Settilli in Atlanta, Georgia. And our listeners are everywhere. You can send your comments and questions, which we will broadcast on air through Twitter at Anderscorr, ANDERSCORR. Amanda Settilli is managing partner of Settilli & Associates and author of The Agility Advantage, How to Identify and Act on Opportunities in a Fast-Changing World. Her clients include Coca-Cola, Delta, Home Depot, and Walmart. She has a business degree from Harvard and taught business at Emory University. Amanda, let's discuss your book. What would you say is the bottom line in a nutshell? What is your elevator speech on the Agility Advantage?
The nutshell bottom line is that change creates opportunity. The way to break that down is agility has three components. Market agility, which is just noticing what's out there and being able to anticipate what might happen next. Decision agility, which is once you know what's going on in the marketplace, being able to come up with a smart and differentiated way of capitalizing on that change. And then execution agility, which is once you start to take action to capitalize on the change, continuing to adjust course as conditions further change.
Okay, that's a great synopsis. So it's all about really grabbing opportunities from crisis. I actually think there's a Chinese character about grabbing opportunities out of crisis. And I suppose sometimes it could be crisis, and sometimes it could be just innovation and changing opportunities that your teams see on the ground. Is that about right?
Yeah, that's right. It's not always crisis, but it can be crisis. It can be changes in the way customers are behaving. It can be new technologies coming down the line. It can be new competitors that you haven't seen before, new business models that you haven't seen before. It can even be changes in your own customer base and your own employees, what their expectations are from their employer. Any kind of change can create opportunities.
Right. So one of the, by the way, I loved your book. I've read it and think it's brilliant. What would you say? I mean, one change that you mentioned is offshoring, and offshoring seems to be reversing itself. You state, why do you see that, and how can frontier and emerging markets continue to be attractive to manufacturers?
Well, there's no doubt that emerging markets can continue to be very attractive for manufacturing. I don't think that that's going away, but I do think a lot of people are moving back, and there's two main reasons. The first is very specific reasons, such as natural gas being cheap, which causes natural gas-based industries to move back. The chemical industry is planning on installing a lot of plants in the next few years. So that's a very specific reason having to do with supply and demand. But there's also a bigger reason, and that is when you have everyone in one place, you can innovate at a much more rapid speed. So when GE brought their appliance division back to Kentucky, they had the shop floor workers working right there with the product managers and the engineers, and the customers were nearby. And so they were able to adapt much more quickly and really take advantages of some opportunities to move faster to take advantage of market opportunities. They actually were able to take costs out relative to the Chinese manufacturers that they had been using.
Right. It seems to me that the lower cost in terms of gas, we're not certain that it's going to last forever, right? So if the market responds by pulling back manufacturing capabilities to the U.S., that could be a mistake if it doesn't last.
Oh, it sure could be, but I think that they're placing a bet based on what they see at the current time, and they're probably hedging by continuing to have some manufacturing overseas as well.
So one of the things that I liked about your book was your discussion of Bezos from Amazon.com and his customer-centric viewpoint. Would you say that is one of the secrets to his success?
Absolutely. Bezos still spends time just reading customer emails, reading customer complaints. CEOs would often think, oh, that's not my job. That's someone else's job to synthesize these and feed them up to me in a digestible form. but he wants to see it right from the customer. The other thing that he does is really focus on, serving his customers above many other constituencies. So people have complained that, it can be a difficult place to work in the warehouses, shipping products so fast. Other booksellers complain that he has undermined their ability to make a profit, and small independent bookstores have shut down. So he's not thinking about everybody. He's thinking about his customer. But if you use Amazon, you love Amazon because it works. It works great. There's pros and cons, but I think that focusing on the customer is certainly a way to become much more agile.
Right. And imagine whenever you have a really successful entrepreneur like Bezos, that you will see disruption that he's causing, and the new markets that he's creating for Amazon are, of course, disrupting old markets. And that disruption, I don't know if that disruption is another crisis that then those older types of companies can then take advantage of. I don't know, what you think about that.
Well, the incumbents didn't do well. Independent bookstores had a very difficult time, and many have shut down. But at the same time, Amazon has created new potential for new opportunities for people like people who are writing online. I mean, look at fan fiction. Who would have even thought that would have existed before? And yet people can come up with ebooks and become very, very popular without putting much money out there. Just a lot of sweat and creativity.
Right. Now I wonder if Amazon has had an effect on Sears. Sears is the model with Sears is people would go into the stores and buy things or buy things off the print catalog. Do you think the Amazon revolution has had an effect on the Sears Corporation?
Absolutely. I mean, Amazon is selling many of the same products, and even if they don't have the same products, they've taught other people how to sell the same products online, and they're not the only thing causing problems for Sears, but they've definitely put a dent in Sears' ability to compete.
Right, and you say that in the book you say that Sears is calcified. Why do you think that is? Do you think why would you say that would be the case?
Well, any company learns from their past successes. And Sears learned that certain locations work well. They learned that their service model was extremely effective. They learned that powerful brands like Craftsman and Kenmore could be extremely successful. But you learn from your successes, and you tend to keep doing the same things over and over again. And I think that that's been their problem. They kept doing what had made them successful in the past, and it's no longer going to work.
So I guess that was one of the points that you've really driven home in your book effectively, is that a successful business requires almost constant innovation. It can never rest on its laurels.
That's exactly right.
Almost like a shark. If it stops swimming, it dies, right?
Exactly right.
So one of the things about Sears one of the stories about Sears that I found kind of humorous, or sadly humorous, was they had these stores. I don't know if you heard about them, where there was no real inventory. It was just a store full of computers, and you could go on and you can order something in the store, and then I guess they would deliver it to you at home, or they would, but they just didn't succeed. I don't know if you had heard that about that attempt at innovation that failed.
Did they have demo models sitting there in the store?
My sense is that they mostly had. It was mostly all online, so it was almost like a big room full of computers, nothing that you can touch and feel. Okay. And so customers went in, and I think they felt that, why would I do it here rather than just working, ordering online from home. They wanted those stores to have things that you can touch and feel, and that was their niche. But that was a case where it was an attempt at innovation. It was an attempt at agility, but it was a failed attempt, right? So innovation doesn't always work. Agility, you can think you're agile and take a flying leap, but you may also land on your nose, right? I mean.
Yeah, I don't know the details behind that story, but I hope that they did it on a prototype basis, and they did it in only one market, and they learned within the first 3 weeks that it wasn't going to work, because it just doesn't make any sense. But one of the things that I advocate in my book is prototyping and testing. Just constantly experiment. So your strategy should be a strategy to learn. That's the objective of your strategy, is to try stuff and see what works. Kill the stuff that doesn't work, keep doing the stuff that does work, and you can evolve in that way in a very prudent and risk avoiding way.
Right. Makes a lot of sense. Another thing you said in your book that I found interesting was Steve Jobs of Apple said he does no market research. Is this true? How can it be that you would have a
I'm sure
company
they
like
do a
that?
little bit of market research. I'm sure they do a little bit, and he was prone to exaggeration, but they didn't do market research with respect to what was the new innovative product going to be. What they did was they made what they wanted to use. And they were very tech-savvy people who were very, very aware of what the potential was by putting together different pieces of technology to create some phenomenal products. They created what they wanted because they knew that if they had asked customers, what do you want in the future, customers really wouldn't have been able to visualize those products that the internal team was envisioning.
Right. One of the things that's, Apple just had its the strongest quarterly profits in the history of corporate America, or corporations in general. Now, part of his model is a proprietary hardware and software that doesn't work with PC and Android systems. I think that's interesting. It's clearly great for Apple's products profits. They're doing the right thing there. But is this this decision to make the hardware and software non-compatible with the other 90% of computer users, is that contrary to Apple customer interests?
No, it's not, because people who use Apple love Apple because there's enough developers developing enough apps that you get incredible variety and you have a fantastic customer experience. So it doesn't really matter to me that my daughter, for instance, uses an Android phone. She's happy, I'm happy on my iPhone. Apple was able to create enough of an ecosystem using their own platform that they made a really great customer experience.
Right. Let 1,000 flowers bloom, as they say. So one of your quotes that I found interesting: when it comes to choosing a vendor, individual people ultimately make the decision. It's important then to know what motivates customer decision makers and how you can help them meet their personal goals. Now, do these personal goals sometimes conflict with, my question is, these personal goals sometimes conflict with organizational goals? And is there an ethics question about appealing to individual organizational goals when dealing with corporate clients?
Well, you clearly shouldn't do anything unethical, like give a major gift or take somebody on a trip or something just to win their favor. But you do need to understand what are the motivations of the individuals that are making the decisions. And hopefully, because their companies are managing them well, their individual needs are well aligned with the needs of the company. The only way that you can truly understand what the company needs is to talk to people, and people are the ones who know.
Yep, yep. And in another part of the book, you talk about modern-day traditionalists. Can you let me know who these people are and how we can reach them? Are they around a campfire somewhere, hooping it up, or?
So that was a very specific example that had to do with Arby's. So Arby's makes roast beef sandwiches. And they're delicious, but it's kind of a traditional food, right? And so when they went out to do in-depth studies of their customers, they actually went into their customers' homes, they looked in their cabinets, they looked at their key fobs to see what loyalty programs they were using. They went out to dinner with them because they really wanted to understand, how do these people think? And they came up with the term modern-day traditionalists, which kind of conveyed that these are people who love good old-fashioned food, they love their family, they have very strong family values, they're patriotic, etc. But they're living in the modern world, right? So they have the same technologies, they have the same time crunch, they're taking their kids to the same soccer games, all of that stuff. They're living in a modern world, but they tend to have very traditional values. That was a market segment that was very useful, a useful way of thinking about it for Arby's. It may not be appropriate for other companies.
Right. And then on page 96, you have a graph 5.2. I'm wondering if we can bring that up and discuss it a little bit. I found it a very interesting graph in that it was quite comprehensive. in terms of the problems of innovation and agility.
Good. Well, I'll just begin talking through it because I think that our tech support guy may be able to put it up. I don't have it at my fingertips right this minute, but I would be happy to send it to anyone if you would like to email me at amanda@satili.com, which is spelled S as in Sam, ETILI.com. And it's also available on our website at www.satili.com. But basically, the chart shows how you should think about all the different trends in the marketplace, all the different potential changes that may occur that you need to keep your eye on and be aware of. So what I do is I start at the most macro sense, the big changes going on in the world, which could be things like more mobile workforce, or the fact that people tend to travel more, or the fact that oil prices are really low right now, or the fact that in America our legislators aren't getting along very well. Those kind of macro trends, those things can affect your business. And then you kind of step in a level. I'm looking at some concentric circles here. You step in a level and you're looking at things that affect your company directly. So you're looking at what are your competitors doing? What are your suppliers doing? What are your customers doing? What are your employee base? How is your employee base changing? And things like that. And then you take another step in, even closer to your company, and you look at, for instance, what's going on inside your company. So you may have, you know, a big new ERP system that's coming in next year, or you may have a different way of working than you had in the past. Or you may have, for instance, some cultural issue that's going on within your own company. So by kind of thinking from the outside in, you can make sure not to miss any major trends that may be going on that may create opportunities for you or may create a problem that you need to avert.
All right, that's great. One more example, the Tato Nano car. So you discussed that a little bit as this brilliant innovation. To me, it seems like a brilliant innovation. They saw the motorbikes. Everyone was on motorbike. They had whole families on motorbikes, and so Tata came up with the Nano car, which cost $2,000 and could be an opportunity for people to sort of trade up from their motorbike to a Nano car. Can you tell us that story? You know, was this a case of innovation that failed?
Well, it did fail in one way, but it succeeded in a lot of ways. So what I love about that example is they just kind of threw away the rule book with respect to cars. You know, prior to them coming up with this idea, cars probably had a minimum cost of, say, $10,000 or so. And they just said, well, right now, the people that we're targeting, they're riding on a motorbike. So they've got you know, a dad, a mom, and two kids riding on one motorbike. It was very unsafe, and it was very uncomfortable in the rain and things like that. So they said, how can we improve on that? And they just came up with very different ways of constructing a car. You know, they said, we don't have to have a seat that moves back and forth. We don't have to have two windshield wipers. We don't have to have, you know, a metal body. We can make it out of a composite. We can glue stuff together instead of riveting it together. So they totally rethought the way the car was made, and they were able to bring it down to a very low price point. They found that it wasn't acceptable for the demographic that they initially had in mind, but they learned a ton through that experience, and that's the point. They learned, and they did find some customers who did like it. For instance, people who were adding a second car to the family, or maybe an infrequently used car. So right. I really do like that example, and failure should not be considered to be something to be avoided at all costs.
Right. I mean, in a sense, they were agile enough to take a product that they thought would be for one demographic and re-gear it towards another demographic in terms of marketing that succeeded. So that's I mean, it's a great point for your book. It's a great example. Now, the IKEA case, where they find that IKEA customers like their furniture better because building it themselves gives them a sense of accomplishment and ownership. I found that very interesting. And you know, how did that? What would be your comments on that innovation process?
Yeah, well, the thing that's interesting about IKEA is if you looked at the furniture industry prior to IKEA coming into it, it was a very high touch, very high service industry where you would go to the showroom, you would sit in this beautiful furniture, you would get lots of attention from the salesperson, and they would deliver this furniture to you, maybe even custom fabrics, etc. A few weeks later, they would move it into your house, make sure that it was set up correctly. It was a very high touch experience, but it, would cost $2,500 sometimes for a couch. It was out of reach for many people. And so IKEA said, well, let's start with a price point in mind and then create a product that can meet that price point so that everybody can have this kind of furniture. And they said, well, what if we didn't deliver it? What if people had to take it home themselves? And what if there was some assembly that the customer had to do? And what if we didn't have very many salespeople in the store? What if it was all self-service and we just hung tape measures and notepads around the store so that people could make their own decisions and be a really self-service model? And lo and behold, people were willing to do that. People were willing to lug the thing home in their trunk and set it up themselves. And what I find fascinating is that when you assemble your furniture yourself, it can be a lot of fun. It's like a Lego toy, they've got these neat little instructions with the little stick figures, and it can be a really memorable family experience. I found that in my own experience, but it's also been proven. There's been research studies that showed that when people assembled their own furniture, they actually liked it more, and they were actually willing to pay more.
Well, Amanda, thank you so much for appearing on Boston Global Forum today. It was just really excellent talk. I thought your book was great, and I encourage everyone to go and buy a copy from Bezos.
Good. All right. Good.
Thank you very much.
All right.
All right.
Thanks, Anders. Bye-bye.
Yes.